When two officers arrested her, they had no idea they'd encounter her again, this time, as the judge deciding their fate. It was a sunny afternoon in Fort Collins, Colorado. The park was alive with the laughter of children, joggers pacing the trails, and families enjoying picnics under the shade of towering oak trees. Amid this lively yet serene atmosphere, a black woman named Camille sat on a bench near the pond, a thick hardcover book resting on her lap. A respected attorney, she had carved out this rare moment to escape her demanding schedule. She was deeply engrossed in her reading when the sharp screech of tires abruptly broke her concentration. A police cruiser pulled up to the curb, drawing curious glances from a few passers-by. Two officers emerged, their stern expressions exuding authority. Their eyes locked onto Camille, the only person sitting alone nearby. "Ma'am, may we speak with you for a moment?" one officer called out, his tone carrying suspicion rather than concern. Camille looked up from her book, her calm demeanor unshaken. "Of course," she replied, carefully closing the book. The second officer stepped closer, his voice clipped. "We got a call about some suspicious activity in the area. Mind telling us what you're doing here?" Clearly puzzled, Camille raised an eyebrow. "Suspicious activity? I'm just sitting here reading." She held up her book as if to prove her point. Their scrutiny, however, didn't waver. "Can we see some ID?" the first officer demanded. Camille's pulse quickened, but her composure held. "I don't understand. What's the reason for this?" "It's routine," the second officer said, though his tone implied otherwise. By now, a small crowd had started to gather. Some looked curious, while others exchanged uncomfortable glances, sensing the imbalance in the interaction. With a sigh, Camille reached into her bag, pulled out her wallet, and handed over her driver's license. The officer scanned it with unnecessary intensity. "Camille Johnson," he read aloud, almost mockingly. "What's your business here, Ms. Johnson?" Camille took a deep breath, keeping her tone steady. "I live in this city. I came to enjoy the park." "Is that a problem?" The officer's lips tightened. "We'll see." Instead of walking away, the officers lingered, their questioning feeling more like an interrogation. "Do you always carry a book like that?" one sneered. "Are you waiting for someone, or are you alone?" the other added, his hand resting deliberately on his belt. Camille had faced countless tense situations in courtrooms, but this felt different. The power dynamic was stark, and their tone carried an edge she recognized all too well. Choosing her words carefully, she said, "I'm not answering any more questions unless you tell me what I'm being accused of." Her firm refusal seemed to strike a nerve. The first officer stepped forward. "Don't get smart with us," he snapped. "We're just doing our job." "And I know the law," Camille replied, her voice unwavering. "I'm not breaking it by sitting in a public park." But reason wasn't on their agenda. The first officer reached for her arm. "Stop resisting," he barked, though Camille hadn't moved. "What are you doing?" she exclaimed, startled. The murmurs from the crowd grew louder. A man pulled out his phone to record the scene. "Stop resisting," the officer repeated, louder this time, as though performing for the growing audience. Camille's heart raced as she felt the cold snap of handcuffs around her wrists. She fought to stay calm, though humiliation and frustration burned in her chest. As the officers led her to their cruiser, ignoring questions from onlookers, Camille turned toward the crowd. She locked eyes with a young woman holding up her phone, a silent plea to document the injustice unfolding. But as the car door slammed shut, Camille knew this was far from the end. It was just the beginning. Inside the cramped back seat of the police cruiser, Camille's mind raced. For years, she had defended clients, stood up for justice, and navigated the complexities of the legal system. Now, she found herself on the other side of it. The absurdity of the situation hit her, but there was no humor in it, only anger. The ride to the station was suffocatingly silent, broken only by the crackle of the police radio. Camille stared out of the window, her reflection merging with the passing scenery. Her wrists throbbed from the cuffs digging into her skin. At the station, things took a turn for the worse. The booking process was invasive and degrading, designed to strip away any dignity. Camille was fingerprinted, photographed, and led to a small holding cell illuminated by fluorescent lights that buzzed incessantly. "Enjoy your stay," one officer sneered as he slammed the cell door shut. Camille sat on the cold bench, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She replayed the events at the park, over and over. How had such a peaceful moment unraveled into this? The answer was bitter and clear: prejudice. Hours passed before anyone acknowledged her again. A young officer approached the cell, clipboard in hand. "Miss Johnson, you've been charged with resisting arrest and obstructing a peace officer," he stated flatly. "On what grounds?" Camille asked, her voice sharper than she intended. "You can discuss that in court," he replied, turning away without elaboration. Exhaling slowly, Camille forced herself to think strategically. She knew the charges were flimsy, but she also knew the fight ahead would be far from simple. Cases like hers rarely were. Eventually, Camille was released on bail. Stepping out into the cool night air, she was greeted by her colleague and close friend, Marissa, waiting by the curb. "Camille." Marissa rushed over, her face etched with worry and relief. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Camille replied, though the tremor in her body betrayed her words. As they drove away, Marissa kept stealing glances at her, waiting for her to speak. Finally, Camille broke the silence. "I'm not letting this slide, Marissa. Not this time." Marissa's grip on the steering wheel tightened. "What are you planning to do?" "I'm tired of this happening," Camille said firmly. "I have the tools, the knowledge, and the resources to fight back. And I will." That night, Camille sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by legal pads and open law books. Determination burned within her as she outlined a civil rights lawsuit against the officers and the department. Her hand shook, not from fear, but from resolve. In the days and weeks that followed, the community began to rally around her. A video of her arrest, recorded by the young woman in the park, had gone viral. Messages of support poured in from people across the country, many sharing their own stories of injustice. Each message strengthened Camille's resolve. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for everyone who had been silenced, humiliated, or dismissed. Even as she prepared for her courtroom battle, she couldn't foresee the twist that would come her way, a twist that would turn the fight for justice into something she never expected. The weeks following Camille's arrest were a whirlwind of emotions and relentless work. Her law firm hesitated at first, worried that her public case might tarnish their carefully cultivated reputation. But Camille stood her ground, explaining that this fight wasn't just personal, it was about setting a precedent. The viral video of her arrest had done more than spread her story. It had ignited conversations across the city and beyond. Footage of Camille, calm yet defiant as the officers led her away, became a symbol of resilience in the face of injustice. Reporters reached out, seeking interviews, but Camille declined every offer. This wasn't about media attention. Her focus was singular: building a solid case that would hold the officers accountable and shed light on the systemic issues enabling such behavior. At night, though, the weight of the situation crept in. In the quiet moments, she replayed the events in her mind: the dismissive tones, the tightening cuffs, the crowd's murmurs. She thought about how easily things could have spiraled even further. The thought made her stomach churn, but it also strengthened her resolve. One evening, as Camille buried herself in research, Marissa arrived with takeout. Setting the containers on the table, Marissa looked at Camille, who hadn't lifted her eyes from her laptop. "You've been at this for hours," Marissa said gently. "I don't have a choice," Camille replied, her tone matter-of-fact. Marissa sat down across from her, studying her determined expression. "You know this is bigger than just a legal battle, right? People are looking to you now." Finally closing her laptop, Camille met her friend's gaze. "I know," she said quietly. "That's why I can't afford to lose." Camille's preparation was meticulous. She combed through similar cases, gathering precedent and evidence to dismantle the officers' claims. She assembled a legal team of colleagues who shared her passion for justice. But Camille knew this wasn't just about the courtroom. She began engaging directly with the community. Camille attended town hall meetings, listened to others who had endured similar injustices, and even spoke at a local college about the importance of accountability. She wanted to be more than a symbol of defiance. She wanted to inspire change. One afternoon, while leaving a meeting, a stranger approached her hesitantly. "Miss Johnson?" "Yes," Camille answered, unsure what to expect. "I just wanted to say thank you," the woman said, her voice cracking with emotion. "For standing up to them. For standing up for all of us." Camille's throat tightened, but she managed a small smile. "I'm just doing what I can." The community's support was empowering, but it also brought immense pressure. Camille knew she couldn't let them down. Then, one day, her attorney called with news. "The officers you're suing filed a motion to dismiss the case," he began. Camille wasn't surprised. It was a predictable delay tactic. "But," he continued, hesitating, "you should know something else. You've been assigned as the judge for one of their cases next month." Camille froze. The irony was staggering. She had spent weeks preparing to fight these officers in court, and now she would preside over their misconduct hearing. Leaning back in her chair, Camille let the weight of the revelation sink in. Could she do this? Could she sit on that bench and remain impartial? Then, she thought of everything they had put her through and the people relying on her to stand firm. This wasn't just a coincidence, it was an opportunity to demonstrate what true justice looked like.